Behind the mahogany bar at the newly opened Ember and Oak, Lorelei's heart danced with anticipation. Every bottle glinting under the warm, recessed lights promised a new adventure and flavor, and the gentle hum of the evening crowd provided a steady rhythm to her work. She was no ordinary bartender. She was an aspiring mixologist, determined to elevate the world of cocktails to a new level of artistry. Her petite frame seemed to vibrate with creative energy whenever she handled bottles and garnish trays. With each swirl of a bar spoon, she conjured visions of exotic places and untold stories. She had arrived in Painted Falls, a quiet lakeside town with a rich history and an unhurried pace. Looking for a fresh start, a year ago, she had been part of a lively metropolitan bar scene where the lights never went out and customers ordered neon colored drinks well into the dark hours. But she had grown weary of the city's unforgiving clamor. Painted Falls felt like a reprieve, its serene air beckoning her to pour out her passion in a gentler setting. The crispness of the pine scented breeze, the reflection of the twilight sky over the nearby lake, and the welcoming smile of the townspeople had sealed the deal for her. As she set down roots, Lorelei promised herself she wouldn't let complacency trap her creativity. Her flair for custom drinks would remain intact, no matter how quiet the town might appear. Late Thursday afternoon, Lorelei kept a watchful eye on the entrance. Her regulars would start filtering in soon, seeking out the comfort of an expertly crafted cocktail and a friendly chat. But this night had an added level of intrigue. She'd heard rumors of a newcomer in town. Painted Falls rarely attracted new residents, so the chatter had built up a sense of mystery. Supposedly, he was a writer, a travel journalist who had grown weary of globetrotting and was now researching small, idyllic towns. Lorelei wondered if he'd find the bar's ambience too subdued, or if, perhaps, there was something intangible in Painted Falls that only a discerning traveler would appreciate. Sure enough, the door opened, and in walked a man with salt and pepper hair, lazily brushing his temples, and a curious glint in his hazel eyes. He wore a comfortable flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up just enough to show forearms, inked with subtle tattoos, travel mementos perhaps. The hush that descended upon the bar made Lorelei certain that this new patron was the talk of the town. He seemed to pause for a moment, taking in the low-lit room with an impressed smile, as though someone had told him a secret and he was eager to discover the hidden joys for himself. "Welcome to Ember and Oak," Lorelei greeted, wiping her hands on a bar towel. "Grab a seat wherever you're comfortable." He nodded, settling at the far end of the bar, away from a small group of friends, engaged in an enthusiastic conversation about a recent town fair. Lorelei found herself drawn to him, and she took a moment to study his thoughtful expression. Perhaps it was the writer in him, always observing, or perhaps he simply felt a genuine curiosity about new faces and spaces. His name, she soon learned, was Harrison Moore. When she asked him what he'd like to drink, he hesitated for a moment. "Surprise me," he said at last, with an air that managed to be both daring and playful, something that reminds me why traveling can be so exhilarating but also comforting, like a memory of home. Lorelei rose to the challenge, her mind sifting through possibilities as quickly as a deck of cards fanning out across the table. She wanted to create a flavor that spoke to faraway lands while grounding him in the warmth of community. She began by selecting a Jamaican dark rum for its richness, then added a dash of lavender syrup she'd made from local blossoms, a hint of fresh lemon for brightness, and a few drops of aromatic bitters that reminded her of the forest. Slicing off a delicate twist of orange peel, she flambéed it gently and let the citrusy aroma bloom. The final flourish was a sprig of rosemary, earthy but with a pungent piney fragrance that danced at the edge of the senses. The drink glowed a soft amber in the glass, promising both adventure and comfort. "Haven't named it yet," she admitted, sliding the cocktail across the polished bar. "Maybe you can help me once you taste it." Harrison lifted the glass to his lips with a curious smile. As he drank, his eyes fluttered shut in appreciation. The tension in his shoulders visibly loosened as though the complexities of the day melted away into a sweet floral warmth. "This is remarkable," he said, opening his eyes slowly. He admired the swirling hues, the way the rosemary sprig bobbed gently at the surface, a bit like stumbling onto a hidden cove in a faraway place. Yet somehow it reminds me of my mother's kitchen garden. It's uplifting and nostalgic all at once. He polished off a second sip, searching for the right name, eventually landing on Piney Shores as a nod to painted falls surrounding forests and the sense of rest that overcame him. Lorelei felt a flutter in her chest at his reaction, her spirits buoyed by his obvious delight. In the weeks that followed, Harrison became a fixture at Ember and Oak. Some evenings he sat quietly, scrawling notes on a battered leather journal, occasionally looking up to watch Lorelei's mastery with the mixing tins and jiggers. Other nights he engaged the other patrons, asking thoughtful questions about Painted Falls, its best hiking trails, its local legends, the famed winter festivals, and the hidden springs only locals knew. It didn't take long for him to gather stories of the small town's past, which he planned to weave into an article highlighting the hidden gems of the region. Every so often, he would challenge Lorelei with a new thematic request. Something that tastes like autumn leaves crunching underfoot, or the kind of cocktail you'd want by a rugged campfire. Lorelei would grin at these whimsical instructions, rummaging through her mental Rolodex of flavors. She used hints of roasted apples, smoky mezcal, or toasted spices like star anise and cloves. With every request, she learned more about him, his favorite travels, the tastes that sparked his imagination, the fleeting images he carried from one hemisphere to another. Their conversations extended beyond cocktails. Late one evening, after most of the patrons had trickled out the door, Harrison lingered at the bar, swirling the last few sips of a whiskey-based drink he'd asked Lorelei to make, reminiscent of a Moroccan desert. "I've wandered countless cities and wildernesses," he confided, thinking that any place could be home, if I carried familiarity in my heart. But now, I want a real home, a place to return to again and again. Lorelei listened with rapt attention, her eyes softening. She understood the longing to belong somewhere, especially since she had once drifted so far from her roots. "Painted Falls might not have the glamour of the big cities," she said, "but there's a quiet warmth here. People are genuine. You can climb up to the vantage point by Silver Point Ridge and see the entire valley at sunset. It'll make you realize how small you are, yet how significant every choice can be. Living here, you can shape your life like a well-constructed cocktail, balancing flavors, waiting for the perfect blend." He smiled at her analogy. "Then maybe I should count on you to help me craft that perfect blend," he teased, downing the last remnants of his drink. The electric moment that passed between them went beyond a friendly jibe. Lorelei felt a pleasant tingle in her fingertips, looking at the way the corner of his mouth curved. Something unspoken shimmered in the air, as subtle yet unmistakable as the perfume of freshly muddled herbs. It soon became a routine for them to embark on little explorations around town, turning these moments of inspiration into recipes. On a crisp weekend morning, Lorelei joined Harrison under the canopy of Painted Falls's farmers market. The air was tinged with apple cider and sweet pastries. Vendors showcased everything from hand-woven baskets to artisanal cheeses. Lorelei and Harrison walked side by side, examining plump peaches, bundles of fresh mint, and bottles of local honey. The synergy of their conversation mirrored the synergy of ingredients swirling in Lorelei's pitcher when she prepared drinks. She ended up leaving with bags of produce she planned to incorporate into a special market-fresh cocktail menu. Harrison would be the first to test any new twists she came up with. They discovered more joys together. An afternoon hike up the winding trail gave them vantage points of Painted Falls that took Harrison's breath away. He used the scenic panorama as inspiration for an upcoming feature he was writing, an article that, as he confided to Lorelei, wasn't simply about painted falls, but about discovering the kind of place where one's soul could finally find rest. In that honest moment, with the horizon stretching before them, he brushed an errant curl away from Lorelei's forehead. "You make this traveler's heart imagine planting roots," he said softly. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, he leaned in to kiss her, his lips tentative yet full of promise. Lorelei's mind whirled with the flutter of 100 wings. She tasted the faint hint of the honey they'd sampled earlier, laced with the fresh piney breeze. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, and she returned his kiss in a moment that felt like a perfect balancing act, equal parts sweet and profound. When at last they broke apart, painted falls spread out around them like a benevolent witness to their newfound bond. Their budding romance uncovered deeper vulnerabilities. Lorelei struggled with the fear that she'd never quite measured up to the success she'd envisioned in her old city life. Although Painted Falls was tranquil, she worried she'd lose her spark if she stayed permanently. Harrison, by contrast, feared that the restlessness that had once pushed him to sail across seas and climb foreign peaks would eventually rear its head again. But in each other they found solace, a reminder that confronting those lingering uncertainties could be softened by the warm glow of companionship. Meanwhile, news spread of Lorelei's custom cocktails. Word traveled quickly through Painted Falls and even started to trickle into neighboring towns. Soon enough, Ember and Oak saw an upswing in visitors looking for something unique. Lorelei never grew tired of the challenge. Every time someone sat down at the bar, she asked them a playful question about their mood or the feeling they craved, and she delivered a drink meant to capture that fleeting essence. She began to view her creative process almost like writing a short poem or painting a small portrait, only her medium involved liquids, garnishes, and the artistry of layering aromas. Harrison became her biggest champion. When he wasn't out interviewing townsfolk or photographing scenic overlooks, he was perched on a stool at Ember and Oak, scribbling in his notebook or simply watching Lorelei in her element. He wrote an article not just about Painted Falls, but specifically about Ember and Oak, highlighting Lorelei's innovative approach and how the bar had become a small haven for the community. The article, once published in a popular travel magazine, brought a wave of curious tourists. Lorelei found herself juggling drink orders from individuals who implored her to make something mysterious, or let me taste what regret and hope mixed together might be. While it was exciting, the surge also tested her stamina. More than once, Harrison offered to take a shift behind the bar, claiming a lifetime of global travels had at least taught him how to pour a decent pint and how to muddle fruit without bruising it too badly. They found a charming rhythm. Lorelei would direct him in measuring out spirits, stirring for exactly 10 seconds and garnishing with precision. Inevitably, she'd end up instructing him with a playful seriousness that made them both laugh. In return, Harrison would regale her with stories of places he'd visited, mysterious old pubs in Dublin, or a quaint seaside shack in the Philippines, where the local fishermen shared homemade coconut liquor with him at dawn. It was as though they traded small gifts each day, intangible treasures that bonded them more closely. But the influx of attention also stirred up a pressing question for both of them. Would Harrison remain in Painted Falls once his article series concluded, once the novelty wore off? And would Lorelei be content staying behind this bar, even as her reputation grew? Rumors buzzed of bigger opportunities, bars in bustling cities sending out feelers, or international whiskey festivals inviting her to do a demonstration. Lorelei felt a swirl of emotions about it, a mixture of pride, excitement, and fear. She had found real happiness here, faced her insecurities, and built something she loved with a man whose presence was increasingly essential to her world. One crisp afternoon, as the leaves began to turn golden red, Harrison and Lorelei strolled by the lake. A gentle breeze swept across the water's surface, setting tiny waves to shimmering. He laced his fingers through hers, occasionally brushing her knuckles with his thumb. "I've been thinking about my next steps," he said quietly. "The truth is, every story I've ever written was about going somewhere else. But this time, I think the story is here. Maybe the next chapter is about staying put. She smiled, relief and happiness surging in her. While the magnitude of such a decision was not lost on her, she felt a spark of hope. I guess the question is, are you settling here just because it's the next curiosity to explore? Or because Painted Falls, and maybe a certain bar, feels like home? Her own heartbeat pounded in her chest as she awaited his answer. Harrison stopped walking and gently turned her toward him. If it were just a curiosity, I would have left weeks ago, off to the next corner of the earth. But I've come to discover that Painted Falls isn't just a scenic spot on a map. It's a place that resonates with a sense of belonging I've never felt anywhere else. You and I, we create something special, like the perfect cocktail. Neither of us knows exactly what the future holds, but I'm ready to find out with you. She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. The crisp air and colorful leaves embraced them like a protective blanket. The only sound was the gentle lapping of the water and the soft rustle of the trees. In the following days, Lorelei felt a renewed sense of purpose. She experimented with new seasonal menus featuring local fall ingredients, maple syrup from a nearby sugar bush, cinnamon-infused bourbon, and bright cranberry shrubs that packed a tangy punch. She and Harrison spent evenings developing thematic names, each referencing a detail from Painted Falls: October Ember, Lake Glow, Sweet Acorn, and Autumn's Whim. The regular patrons reveled in the creativity, drifting in from the chilly outdoors for a comforting swirl of flavors that warmed them from the inside out. Tourists joined in the festivities, often lured by Harrison's articles praising the bar's atmosphere and inventive approach. Yet one afternoon, an unexpected letter arrived, addressed to Lorelei, from a well-known restaurant conglomerate in the city. The letter praised her innovative approach and invited her for a formal interview. "We'd love you to consult on a new high-profile bar in the heart of downtown," it read. "Your flights, accommodations, and a generous creative stipend would be covered." Lorelei's heart pounded. This offer was significant, a dream opportunity that she once believed she needed to cement her status in the mixology world. But now, as she clutched the letter, she felt torn. The city life she'd left behind felt less appealing than it once had. She debated discussing it with Harrison, but a glimmer of doubt nagged her. If she told him right away, would she appear ungrateful for what she'd built in Painted Falls? Would he worry she was already planning to leave? That evening, Harrison noticed her tension. Folding his notes about a recently visited cider mill, he propped his elbows on the bar. "All right, what's on your mind?" he asked gently. Lorelei pulled out the letter, sliding it across the bar to him. He read it, exhaled, and regarded her with thoughtful eyes. "This is huge," he murmured. "I guess you're deciding whether big city success outweighs what you have here?" She nodded, standing taller. "I love Painted Falls. It's given me so much quiet and space to explore my creativity. And, of course, it's how I found you. But I also wonder if there's a part of me that wants to prove myself on a bigger stage." Harrison took a long moment, rubbing his chin as he considered. "I'd never ask you to give up your aspirations. You have real talent, and opportunities like this don't come along every day. The question is whether it aligns with the life you really want." His voice held no trace of pressure. Instead, it offered unwavering support. He placed a comforting hand on hers. "The one thing I can promise is that I'm not going anywhere. For now," he said. "Whether you decide a short consultation in the city is worthwhile, or if you want to chase it full time, that's your call. But Painted Falls isn't losing me, and I'd like to think it won't lose you either. Maybe you can create something that extends beyond just one location. Your style is flexible, just like a well-constructed drink. You can serve it in multiple places." Her eyes shimmered with gratitude. "Maybe it's time to realize I don't have to choose between success and a place that feels like home," she whispered. They shared a soft kiss, born of mutual respect and encouragement. In the end, Lorelei decided to meet with the restaurant conglomerate. She told them she was open to a brief consulting contract that would let her share her ideas on menu creation and bar management, but also preserve the personal, artisanal touch she cherished. She explained that her life was bound to Painted Falls. To her relief, the executives were thrilled, seeing in her exactly the kind of modern mixologist who brings authenticity and warmth to each drink, forging an experience people would travel to taste. They offered a flexible arrangement that would allow her to keep Ember and Oak as her home base, traveling to the city periodically to consult on design, flavor profiles, and staff training. When she returned, Painted Falls welcomed her back with open arms. The first night she stood behind the bar after finalizing her deal, she felt a sense of peace wash over her, a certainty that she could expand her horizons without sacrificing her roots. The regulars cheered when she announced that Ember and Oak would remain her creative home. It was an affirmation that Painted Falls still had its local cocktail virtuoso at heart. Harrison's eyes lit up with pride as he clapped along with everyone else. Later that night, after the bar had quieted down, he slid onto his usual stool, and Lorelei set a brand new cocktail in front of him. This time, she had combined an aged whiskey with nuances of spiced pear syrup, a touch of black walnut bitters, and a dusting of nutmeg on top. The garnish was a single edible flower floating gently above the ice. "No name yet," she said softly, heart beating in her chest, "but it's meant to capture the evolution of something precious, something that keeps growing even when the seasons change." Harrison tasted it, his eyes lighting up in recognition of the bittersweet complexity. "It's like celebrating everything that's led you here, while still looking to the future," he murmured, swirling the ice around. He took another sip, letting the layers unfold. "How about a toast to love?" Lorelei felt her cheeks warm as she nodded in agreement, leaning across the bar to kiss him. In that tender exchange, the entire journey crystallized. Her arrival in Painted Falls, the spark of creativity that blossomed into something extraordinary, and the promise of shared adventures yet to come. They closed the bar together that evening, turning off the overhead lights so that only the soft glow of small wall sconces remained. In the subdued lighting, the array of bottles behind them glimmered with possibility and memories. Harris entwined his fingers in Lorelei's hair. "To us," he whispered, raising the glass, "and to all things shaken and stirred, both in a glass and in our hearts." She clinked her glass against his, smiling as echoes of laughter, hope, and devotion reverberated through the empty bar. In that moment, Painted Falls felt like the center of the universe, and Ember and Oak felt like the place where existence itself was distilled into a single, perfect blend of love and ambition, shaken and stirred, just right, ready to be savored one sip at a time.